Right, I think we will get started. Latecomers can be late. That's absolutely fine. So everyone, look, we have a true honor this evening or this morning or afternoon, wherever you are. We're delighted to be joined by Professor Emin Gun Sirer. And I hope I haven't botched the name too much. I was watching a few videos to make sure I got it vaguely right. He is an associate professor at Cornell, but most importantly, an incredible thinker on the space throughout the years, not just post Bitcoin, but pre Bitcoin. I'm sure we might hear a little bit about that, and he might have even been the first person to propose a peer-to-peer currency with Karma. But he is now the CEO of Avalanche, which, as you know from the hackathon, is an outstanding. I tempted to say new, but they've been around for a little while, but certainly competitor in the layer one space that I know the hackers are greatly enjoying learning about and deploying dApps on and building on, and has some very special features that I'm sure are going to come to even more prominence over the next 2 years. So the way this works, guys, as you know, if you've been to our IMAs before, I'm going to ask a few questions to get the conversation started, and then it's handing over to you guys to ask whatever you want. You can either do so by raising your hand and asking a question via video, or via chat, and I will read out your question. And please ask great things, ask whatever you want. We've had some very great people over the last kind of month, and this is, I think, the best so far. So enjoy it. Professor, I want to start by asking a very simple question that I asked to all our guests. When you were an undergrad, what were your ambitions? Did you want to be a researcher? Did you want to be an entrepreneur? Did you want to change the world? What were your ambitions as an 18-year-old?
That's such a great question. I started out wanting to be an AI person. So I grew up in Istanbul at a time when computers and computerization was just beginning. So we were getting personal computers in the homes, and they were kind of going into all kinds of businesses. And it was so clear what you could do, right? The power of computing is amazing. You see that you can automate processes and make them run really, really smoothly. And so I thought, well, the obvious conclusion is we're going to build intelligent machines. I want to be at the forefront of this. I want to build AI machines. And I got the scholarship to attend Princeton University. I went there. And then I saw quickly that, I mean, even before going there, there were some issues that caused problems, right? You would go to a bank back in the day, and then the bank would say, well, could you come back the next day because all our systems are down. You'd go to the airport and, the check-in systems would be down. This is not something you see as often today. You see it in different forms. But back then it was so obvious that we didn't know how to build robust infrastructure. And very quickly I realized, look, this AI field, they can only do toy stuff at the moment, which back then that's all they could do. And the burning problem of the day is that we don't understand how to build robust, large-scale infrastructure, especially distributed infrastructure. So I wanted to build systems that have a life of their own, systems that are robust, that are resilient to faults, that provide a service even in the presence of problems. And that's what got me going. So I switched to systems. I started working on operating systems, which is the lowest level of software that sits right on top of the hardware. And then I branched out a little bit into distributed systems and found myself playing with cryptocurrencies back in 2001 when I was a young assistant professor at Cornell University. That's when I started at Cornell about 19 years ago. So I started out, as I said, from AI to systems, from fairly high level down to the very, very close to the metal kind of a person. And I haven't been wrong. I think we still don't know how to build large scale systems that work. And so it's been a fun journey for me.
Fantastic. So I want to talk about Karma. I mentioned it in the kind of introduction, but I've read on a few places that so this, for those that don't know, this was a kind of peer-to-peer cryptocurrency, effectively, that Emin kind of proposed back in kind of 2002 and wrote a paper, gave a workshop on it for what I could read. And you didn't pursue it because, again, it was 2002 at this time. The idea of doing a peer-to-peer cryptocurrency a year after 9/11 doesn't necessarily seem the thing that gets you funding. Do you kind of given what happened kind of 6-7 years later, do you regret not pursuing it? Or do you think you kind of weighed the risks up kind of well enough?
Yeah, there are a couple of things I regret. I don't regret not pursuing it. That was the right thing for me career-wise at the time. I do regret not having a grand enough vision at the time. My vision at the time was, look, it's going to be impossible to, it's going to be very hard to build such a currency. It's going to be very, very difficult to get it off the ground. A magic internet currency that is used for file sharing on the internet, that seems achievable. But magic internet currency that replaces the dollar, that didn't seem achievable to me. And Satoshi, to his credit, I think he did two things absolutely perfectly, maybe three things absolutely perfectly right that I didn't get right. So number one, he had a much grander vision, and he sets out the bar saying, I want to replace all currencies. So so even if he is going to succeed, even if he's going to not succeed in the end, even if he's going to fail at this, having that kind of vision catalyzes a certain crowd around you. So I learned that from him. So I regret not having as grand a vision back then when I was younger. I was very practical back then. The second thing he had on top of what we had in Karma is a new technical improvement, his own consensus protocol. And that was a brilliant breakthrough. And so that really did advance the science. We have to give him credit for that. And then, of course, timing is everything. Karma system is very well cited by academics, but as you said, it came right on the heels of 9/11, and it wasn't going to take traction in society at large at that point in time. They would have cranked down on it. It's just the authorities would have come after us immediately had I pushed it any further. But he came after 2008, and right on the heels of the financial crisis. And so that timing was absolutely fantastic. You got to get the timing right as well. So he had that going for him. And so, yeah, I don't regret what I did, but I've learned my lessons. I think and anybody listening to this, at any one time, there are certain burning problems in society. In fact, Richard Feynman talks about this. Richard Feynman, who's a Nobel laureate, who was a Nobel laureate, he passed away a few years ago. He says, look, and he's a physicist, he says, look, at any one time, there are a couple of big burning questions. You got to be working on one of those. Don't be working on something fringe. Don't be working on something that's way farther ahead. Just pick one of the main problems, go into the fray, battle it out with everybody else who's doing the same stuff, and work on one of those. And so I believe in that. And reimagining finance is that problem right now. We haven't automated finance, and we have to just reimagine how we do this. We cannot have these stovepiped verticals unique to each and every jurisdiction, unique to each and every country. We got to have a global financial network that interoperates, and that's my vision now.
How easy do you think it is for a kind of, I think the average kind of person we see is a very smart kind of, let's say, person in their mid-20s, perhaps in some broad and emerging research field, that it's kind of hard to know. They're kind of hard to know what they can find it difficult to know what they actually want to do. And so having a big vision, how easy is this when you're kind of 25, and how easy is it to err and just pick the wrong thing, especially, by the way, with kind of research choices when you're doing kind of a PhD or being a kind of postdoc researcher. It's kind of, you're making a bet like an entrepreneur, and it can go very wrong. How easy is this process?
Right. It's very hard. Let's be honest. This is very, very tough. I can give some advice about how to navigate that space. And it's going to be unorthodox advice. So if you talk to all these other people, especially if you talk to Americans, they are so planned. They are so rigid. And they will ask you to come up with, specify where you want to be in 5 to 10 years, write down your strengths. Don't be doing all that stuff. They will try to come up with a plan, a deep directed plan for you to pursue your dreams. And so I think that's completely wrong. Don't be doing that, because you end up going into rat holes. A very common rat hole, for example, is you get these kids, they are in their 18 to 25 range, and they start looking for themselves. Well, what is my grand vision? What is it that I should be doing? Let me take some time off and try to find myself or my goal in life. And don't be doing any of those. So when I was growing up, I just didn't have the luxury of being able to take time off to look for myself and whatnot. But I usually tell people, look, you cannot be looking for yourself. If you need to find yourself, look, I already found you. You're right in front of me, right there. You are who you are right now. It's time to just broadly immerse yourself. Don't try to be too efficient at this process. Just go at it. Just voraciously read, voraciously explore, and you don't need a structured lesson plan or a structured path through this space. It's a very vast space. And in fact, the people who over specialize, the people who try to find a very efficient route end up becoming over specializing along a certain direction and losing out. So you need to just cover the space in a shotgun approach. Read everything there is to read, especially in an area like blockchains that is so interdisciplinary, that spans math, computer science, game theory, mechanism design, economics. You just got to start reading all across those disciplines. There isn't going to be a single path that is right for, for anyone actually. So just voraciously read, explore, fail, and don't feel bad about failing, especially if you're young. There's zero cost to failing. And try some projects. Most important of all, you have to have a good network around you, off of which you can bounce ideas. So, venues like this are fantastic ways of getting that network built up. And you got to use that bouncing of ideas, that interaction, as a way to find something that clicks. And then, you go on from one to the other to the other. And at some point you look back and you realize, whoa, I've come quite a long ways and I'm an expert at something now.
Outstanding. That is a fantastic snippet. And certainly, I think, very pertinent for many young people. Changing things a little bit, let's go a bit blockchain related. So I was reading through your blog I wanted to go right back to the start and see what you were saying in 2013. And I found a quote here which said, "My pet theory is that every field that sits on top of an exploitable exponential process wields immense power in society." So I want to ask you, in crypto, in blockchain, who holds this power, and are they wielding it well, would you say?
Yeah, great question. So, right, I was pointing out back then an issue that I noticed, that there are certain fields that command respect in science and certain fields that command less respect. Like physicists, they seem to be, defining the scientific path for the US right now. Biologists, they're very prominent. And if you think about how they come to have that power, it's because they are sitting on top of an exponential process. Physicists sit on top of the nuclear reaction process, as we all know, one of the biggest sources of power, both military and electrical, or both energy and military. Biologists with epidemics, as we are seeing right now, and computer scientists with Moore's law and our ability to compute at ever faster rates. We command power. In crypto, I think we are now at a stage where it feels like we've had computers forever. It feels like we're quite advanced. We're barely scratching the surface. The world has just barely started. It was only 20 years ago today that we had the dot-com boom, and people were trying to sell pet food over the internet. And so back then, what really happened is we got the telecom industry, we got the infrastructure built. And these days, if I look around at the unicorns that are coming out of Wall Street, which is right in front of me right now, let's take a look around. Like you see Uber, you see Airbnb. They're applying the world's simplest idea, which is automation, to some very prosaic field, like calling a cab or booking a hotel. So, and they're suddenly unleashing enormous amounts of economic activity. So now, if you look at what crypto is trying to do, it's trying to do the exact same thing for all of finance. So whereas Uber is a multi-billion-dollar company, there are multi-trillion-dollar companies that can be had if people play their cards right. And that's exactly, I think, the goal, that should be the goal of anybody in crypto. How do we reimagine finance from its roots all the way to the top? Because I for sure know, any technical person can tell you that the way we've architected these systems right now is completely broken. And I'm happy to get into various different examples from recent history, but it's just completely broken. And it could be so much better with the application of proper computer technology. In crypto, we are doing this. The vision is very strong. How fast we're going, that's a different issue. I don't think we're going fast enough. I think in the 10 years that Bitcoin has been out, we as a crypto field what have we really succeeded at? We added Turing completeness, that's good. We added we added 6,000 cryptocurrencies, most of which are clones of Bitcoin or slight tweaks on Bitcoin. And I don't think the world has really yet seen what this area is capable of. So we could do far, far better. So I'm not happy with the pace within crypto, but I love the vision in crypto, and that vision will get us results. And there are many other side visions as well. There's also, of course, Satoshi's vision, which is replace the dollar, which I think is still a tall order. I don't know if it will happen. And there are many other, there's the world computer vision from Ethereum and so on. There are many different visions. My own is replace Wall Street, to give the world a better foundation for financial transactions. And I think that's really a compelling one. And I'm not happy with the rate of progress. That's one of the reasons why I stepped in here to say, hey, nobody else is doing what should be done. It's pretty obvious to me. It's not even that complicated. So, but it's high time that somebody goes in and says, hey, this is how you do this.
And on that subject, so I mean, if one sees traditional finance and political systems around them as kind of having control here, I mean, it's quite centralized in the grand scheme of things. Why would they kind of yield control in some sense? I'm kind of interested in this almost from a socio-political point of view, because I remember the thing I studied at university, why systems change, and it usually was from an existential threat, not because it was for the goodness of anyone's heart or from the goodness of anyone's hearts. So why would these systems change, and what are the kind of catalysts for that change?
That's a great question. This is so there are people in crypto who think that there will be a patch over, that there will be some day when you wake up and suddenly NASDAQ announces that all trading on their platform will have a crypto API, or every single stock certificate now has been digitized. It's in digital form on a blockchain. So there are people who believe in this and are working towards this. And I'm not one of them. I don't think that's going to happen. The incumbents are very strong. They have a nice income stream. They're not going to change a thing about what they do. If anything, they will try to impede the rate of progress in other areas. So the way things change, as I have seen time and time again, is not that the incumbent adopts the new technology. They just typically sit around. They give you gasoline-powered cars until Tesla comes along. They give you whatever old school thing that they've always been doing until there's an actual existential threat on the side. And that threat on the side has to be strong enough and compelling enough to grow on its own, such that it becomes so big that these other people say, hey, this thing has grown so much that we're going to now merge with them or become subsumed by them or try to subsume them right before they get to that size. So what I think I'm seeing right now is a lot of very cool projects are raising money by issuing tokens. So stock certificates of yesterday are now being replaced by crypto tokens of today. And at some point, there will be so many of these companies that got their start by issuing tokens that trading their tokens is going to have to be a thing that other people support. And in fact, just today, I think the Dow Jones announced an index for crypto. And that's just one of the very first steps of this transformation. We will see many more of these. And I don't think Ford stock is going to be put on a blockchain anytime too soon. There are companies working on it, but all of Ford stock is not going to be on a blockchain anytime soon. In fact, what you're going to see is that there will be a new set of companies that were always crypto native, and then they subsume what was. I mean, the other companies will die out eventually, and these new exchanges with these new assets will take their place. So that's the vision. I think it's going to take at least a decade. So we're only at the very, very beginnings of this, but it's unstoppable because it's so convenient. Anybody who has used this technology knows exactly what I'm talking about, in the sense that, hey, it has so many advantages. The reach is amazing. The instantaneity is amazing. So it's here to stay. It cannot be censored. It cannot be stopped. It's very difficult, and the community support for it is so strong. So I'm very hopeful that this transformation has already started. It's going to be incremental. It's going to be on the side, separate, and it's going to just become its own thing that is bigger than what was there before. So I don't think the incumbents will adopt us. We will just subsume them.
Well, last question for me, and then we'll hand over to the students. Let's talk about subsumption. So let's talk about Avalanche. So Avalanche is doing great things right now. It's a particularly exciting time. But I remember reading a story about how you You once tried to buy a Russian bond, a sovereign bond, and wanted a 14% interest rate, and they offered you these kind of crappy junk bonds, and you said, no, I want this, and then someone eventually offered it to you, but it was $1 million to go and get it, which is obviously prohibitive. I'm interested to know, kind of linked to that, you mentioned finance. I've heard you talk about many things from real estate to kind of building better smart contracts to kind of disrupting traditional finance. But what do you think the big use case will be on Avalanche? If Ethereum kind of had ICO and then it's kind of, you could say DeFi, what's Avalanche's going to be?
It's going to be to digitize all assets. So our subline or byline in Avalanche is digitize everything, digitize all assets. There are so many financial products out there that exist that are very thinly traded, that cannot be reached by most people. There are so many financial products that could be devised that aren't devised because getting them out into the hands of people who might want them is so difficult. And Avalanche's main idea is to make it possible to create digital assets that can be traded around the world at incredibly high speeds with very low latencies and on a transparent, fast fashion. So that's the big idea, I think. We've seen just how successful even assets like Bitcoin can be, right? So Bitcoin is a multi-$100 billion market cap right now, and it's got only one purpose, right? Store of value. And but there are assets out there that are actually quite functional, that people want to trade. They correspond to real world things. There are debt instruments out there. There are all sorts of other things that are to be devised that don't exist, like income sharing agreements and so on, that are alternative assets, these more fancy futuristic things that would have rather large markets. And if only one could figure out a way to trade them easily, if only one could find a way to get them in the hands of the global community. So that's what we're going after. And we certainly want to also support integration with the existing financial system. What happens in the blockchain space is these blockchains implement their own rules and their own rules only. And those rules don't correspond to any legal jurisdiction. So you don't have, you have these assets that are ungovernable. They don't integrate well with the systems that we have today. So using Avalanche, you can create what we call subnetworks that obey slightly different rules per jurisdiction. And that allows you to have compliant assets, that you can issue regulatorily compliant assets that are legal to trade in wherever domain you want to trade them in. So so that's our approach, and that's the main set of things we're going for. When I was younger, people always said, this web, this internet, like it's good, but what's the internet's killer application? And then the web came along and they're like, well, this web thing, it's really cool. I can get to any website, but what's the killer app on the web? And the killer app is usually the very first app. It's something really dumb. It's so dumb. It's right in front of you that other people are looking at and they think, this is too dumb to be the killer app. Well, the killer app for the internet was email, and then it became the web. The killer app for the web was go to a website, buy stuff, or go to a website, get information. Seems stupid, but nevertheless, that's what we do. That's what I was doing right before this call. That's what I'm going to go back to doing right after this call. And the killer app for blockchains is create assets. It's that simple. And figure out a way to connect them to the real world, figure out a way to make them legal, and then people will trade those assets to kingdom come. You can see that these assets hardly ever die. Even the most broken ones live forever because there's a trader community that grows around them. So if you've got something with financial value, why wouldn't you want to open it up to the entire world? Why would you want to tie it down to a small little stovepiped vertical in the hands of a couple of gatekeepers who charge enormous amounts or put all sorts of impediments in the path of people who want to acquire these assets? Put them on a blockchain where they belong. So that's clearly the killer app for me.
Fantastic. Well, I want to hand over to some of the students for some questions now. So guys, so a lot of you put them on chat already, which is fantastic. I'm going to go through those. If you want to ask a question kind of face to face, please put your hand up and I will make sure to spot you, and we'll give you the right to kind of put your camera on and speak. But I want to ask this question linked to kind of Avalanche, and I guess this is mainly a question of latency here, which I think is one of the most important things when we're talking about Avalanche. But Andrew, who's a PhD at Cambridge, says, can you talk about the benefit of unique virtual machines provided by the Avalanche platform, and maybe compare it to other smart contracting kind of platforms and Ethereum?
Absolutely. What a great question. So just about every one of the 6,000 coins out there copied Bitcoin's architecture. And now what's Bitcoin's architecture? You have a coin, you have a virtual machine that implements the behavior of that coin, that defines how that coin should behave. And then you have a network, a single network that implements that virtual machine and keeps tabs on who's got how many Bitcoins. And then, of course, people have Bitcoins, they shill it all day. Then you've got the whole Bitcoin maxi thing going and so on. And that's fine. And everybody else copied this. Ethereum is not very different. These other coins, they're all doing the same thing. You've got one coin, one virtual machine, one network. The Avalanche vision is different. We envision a world where there are many different coins built on top of Avalanche. Each and every one of them may have a different way of behaving. And it might actually be the case that these behaviors need a different way of specifying them. So there is not going to be a single virtual machine that is one size fits all. So is the EVM that thing? Definitely not. There are so many shortcomings of the EVM itself. Could I imagine coming up with EVM++ that is the end all be all? No, there is not going to be a single person who can define a single virtual machine that's perfect for everything on Earth. That's just too tall an order. So the Avalanche vision is that we support multiple virtual machines. As far as I know, we are the only chain that supports more than one virtual machine. We have the Avalanche virtual machine, which is a tiny virtual machine for creating assets and dealing with them. We also have the Ethereum virtual machine. So all of Ethereum in its entirety is a sub-network for Avalanche. So, but tomorrow it could well be that there is the WASM virtual machine that people want to use. Suppose people want to write their smart contracts in Java. Then what are you going to do? It's very difficult to compile Java down to the EVM. So if you're going to compile it down to WASM, well, then somebody should be able to support it. Well, Avalanche is in a position to support it. So you can have any number of these virtual machines to have any number of these assets. And those assets can communicate over Avalanche. That's the main thing, one of the main things that the platform also provides. It provides the ability, the flexibility to have multiple virtual machines stacked on top of each other and to have these networks that implement these virtual machines to communicate with each other. So we're trying to create, essentially it's kind of similar to, this is going to be a dated analogy, but when the internet was first starting, every campus had its own special networking. In fact, at Oxford, at Cambridge, they had incompatible different networks that were devised by various different faculty on campus. And so each campus would have wired up its own internal network. And the internet, there is from being able to interoperate between those networks. The internet was the common protocol that connected these networks together so that you could send a message from Princeton to Oxford or Oxford to Cambridge and so on. So Avalanche's goal is to be that protocol. It has the ability to serve as the common medium of communication, common medium of value transfer between, and common medium of computational invocation between multiple networks.
Outstanding. Right, there are a lot of questions. I'm not quite sure what order to do them in, but let's go for the reasonable order. What integrations would you like to see into Avalanche? This is Eddie from University of Cape Town. You take this as general as you want it.
Sure. The very first thing that I need to see, that I'm working really hard to see, is getting stable coins on top of Avalanche. So they're already, it's kind of funny actually. Somebody issued a stable coin on our testnet. And then we have to tell them, no, don't be doing that. This is just a testnet. Don't put actual value on the testnet. We reserve the right to nuke it at any time. But on the main network, there's currently one stable coin, but we need to have many others. Avalanche only went mainnet 2 months ago, so we're very early on. But in the coming weeks, I hope to announce some stablecoin integrations. This is fiat-backed stablecoin integrations, like things that are backed by the dollar, things that are backed by the euro, things that are backed by other major fiat currencies. That's one. Of course, DeFi integrations are incredibly important. That's the second biggest thing on my plate. So I would love to see Uniswap on top of Avalanche. I would love to see all kinds of automated market makers. I would love to see DEXs. I would love to see liquidity pools. All of those tools or Lego building blocks from DeFi that are actually genuinely useful in multiple contexts, I would love to see on Avalanche. We are encouraging this. We're giving out grants to this effect. So if anybody listening is interested, we would love to and would like to do something in this space. We would love to talk to you, would love to support, mentor, and provide financial support as well for any worthy project with a credible team. So what did I say? Stablecoins, DeFi, and then the sky's the limit after that. So there's much more to do. We get into more esoteric territory after that, but there are great apps to be built using those tools.
Yeah, you've managed to also kill about 3 or 4 questions with one stone there, so much appreciated. A lot of people are asking when will we see DEXs, when will we see stable coins? So I know that in guys, go on.
Yeah, Anthony, so I've been carrying like a huge weight, right? So we have built a lot of technology. We have partnered with a bunch of existing players. We've been talking to a whole bunch of people in the community. So it's now the time to start pushing these out and to grow our community even further. So so there are lots of exciting announcements coming up, and we are going to be very aggressively pushing to work with bright people to bring new technologies or new projects on board Avalanche. So it's going to be a fun year ahead.
Absolutely. Well, I hope we're going to see some fantastic DeFi projects come out of the hackathon and go on to build an Avalanche. We actually had a stable coin called Reflexor Labs that came actually third, ironically, 2 hackathons ago, and then raised 1.7 led by Paradigm. So there is there's a path to follow, certainly if you're in the Encode hackathon. Right, let's go a little bit more, I guess, political. What do you, there's this bill going around in Congress, or discussions of a bill around regulating the stablecoin industry. What are your thoughts on this? And I guess broadly, your thoughts on the kind of political intervention into crypto over the next few years?
So I am incredibly wary of these kinds of things. So what happened today or yesterday? What happened yesterday was that 3 representatives from Congress introduced a bill that says that they would like to regulate stable coins. To make it's a good, it's well intentioned. They want to regulate and make sure that these stable coins keep the underlying backing assets safe. And they want to do so by subjecting the stablecoin operators to banking rules. And so I'm mixed on this. What they want to do is good. What they want to do is what everybody in crypto has been asking for. We all have been asking that Tether subject itself to an audit. Everybody has been pushing it. In fact, the Tether folks, which are wonderful people, by the way, already realized this. Part of their initial plan was very much to provide those audits. So everybody understands the need for this. Now, the question is, how do you get to where you want to get to? And one way is the heavy-handed government hammer. And that's kind of like, how you look in the mirror and you say, like, whatever, Sandman 3 times, and Sandman appears behind you. So if you look in the mirror and you say regulation, 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 well, then they will appear behind you. And they're not going to be very, they're not always the people with the lightest touch. And a nascent area like this can be smothered easily. And what started out as well-intentioned efforts can turn into, let's protect the incumbents and let's kill innovation. And that's my biggest worry. So to date, to their credit, regulators in the US have been fantastic. They have been exercising a light touch. This is not by mistake. It's because a lot of people, and myself included, briefed all sorts of politicians to make sure that they did understand the limitations of the space, that they did not look stupid by trying to regulate the unregulable, by trying to do things that the network would just route around anyway. So I think we did a good job there, at least in the US and also in Europe as well. We did okay. I've also spoken to EU regulators as well. Some other countries, if you look at Russia, if you look at India or China, they've had a spottier record. They sometimes regulate, they realize they did something silly, they unregulate or deregulate, and then they do this weird cycle. They don't really look all that smart. But the progress of the technology is unstoppable. This particular piece of legislation is going to die. It's coming in at the very end of a session, and it's done for PR purposes as opposed to actual genuine push. So I don't expect much from it. I am wary of regulation in this space. So then the last remaining issue is, what would I like to see? I would like to see the space self-regulate. In an ideal world, we would not need outside intervention. And to the extent that we can make that happen by putting pressure on the right parties, we as people who are in the space, then we should be doing that. I've been doing this behind the scenes, also in public, as well as I'm sure everybody on this call has essentially the same kinds of concerns. Like the people you deal with, you want them to subject themselves to the highest of standards without having to be hit with a stick by an outside regulator.
Very good. So question from Gerald from ETH Zurich says, do you think most crypto projects are too centralized?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'd say if you look around, let's take. I don't want to pick fights with any particular coin or currency, but pick your favorite coin. I don't care which one it is, other than Avalanche. Pick one, and look at the number of people who are responsible for constructing the entirety of that blockchain. It's a very simple metric. So who out there is mining the blocks for your favorite chosen currency? And then sum it up. If the number is 3 digits, fantastic. And so that number for Avalanche is 600, by the way, 700. As of yesterday, it was 700 something. So that number for many other currencies is about 20. So, take a look at Facebook's Libra, right? What's the idea? We're going to replace sovereign currencies. And what are we going to replace it with? Well, we're going to replace it with Mark Zuckerberg and his 27 best friends. That's a non-starter. That's a crazy, crazy suggestion. So there are a ton of ideas like this, which are centralized, very, very crappy things that essentially shift power from one set of incumbents to a new set of wannabes. And we should just laugh at these things. That's the right thing to do. But the problem is, even the best of the technology suffers from centralization. If you look at Bitcoin, all Bitcoin miners, 99% of Bitcoin miners are manufactured by the same entity, by one company. If you look at, pick your favorite, again, coin in the top, whatever, it's just going to be a few dozen mining pools, or it's going to be a few dozen stakers that are responsible for the construction of that chain. Is law enforcement incapable of sending injunctions to a few dozen entities? No, hell no. They do that all the time. They do a coordinated raid where they, line up, 500 people all at once overnight. And they can do that to any one of these currencies that are supposedly censorship proof and unstoppable, etc. They will stop. It's not actually that hard to stop even the strongest seeming of the current crop of technologies. So that was one of the big impetus for us pushing Avalanche. So Avalanche does not suffer from this. It has decentralization up the wazoo. It is the one protocol that can incorporate tens of thousands to tens of millions of block producers firsthand into the protocol.
So on this, H asks, but doesn't Arbor Labs control 160 million of the 280 million tokens staked? Isn't that kind of quite a centralized statistic?
Absolutely, that's a very good question. I don't know the number we control. That's a good question though. So there's a chicken and egg problem. So I have to take my hat off to Bitcoin. Bitcoin has excellent distribution. The technology has shortcomings, as we know, with the number of transactions per second it can process at layer 1 with its latency and so forth, and also it's environmentally incredibly damaging. But they have fantastic distribution. So AVAX tokens just got distributed in July. It's only been 2 months since the mainnet has been operational. So those coins need to get into the hands of the larger larger public at large there. And we got to get there. So that's one of the main things that I want to achieve is get Avox to be so distributed so as to not have any node play a role that's higher than 1% of the network of the state out there.
Who is this ideal person you kind of like to distribute tokens to? Because I think a lot of the people that end up kind of, oh, can you hear? Sorry, I thought you were cupping your ear.
You got cut off a tiny bit for me. Could you say?
No. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Who is the ideal person you'd want to distribute the token to? So obviously people do it for kind of selfish reasons, investment reasons, profit reasons. But I know we have a lot of students here that don't do that, for instance. They just kind of might pick a coin because they wanted a hackathon or they like it. Yeah, who is the ideal person you'd want to have the kind of Avalanche token?
Yeah, it's going to change through the lifetime of any project. So when your project has become supremely stagnant, then all you want are people who are going to hold your coins and do nothing with it, right? You're not going to change the tech. The tech is probably doing whatever it does and not much more, and you don't feel like really exerting yourself. That's when you push for the HODL narrative. At the moment for Avalanche, and I hope Avalanche never gets there. I hope the underlying system is constantly evolving and adding new features. And with the architecture we built, we have that capability. At the moment, we are extremely keen on getting developers. My ideal person is an energetic developer and who has ideas that they want to experiment with. They're looking for a fast chain. They're looking for a chain with high throughput capacity. Or they're looking for a chain that's flexible where they want to deploy their own contracts, their own virtual machines, etc., or they want to create their own subnetwork. Somebody energetic, tech-minded, and wants to do things, wants to change the world. That's my ideal person, and would love to. That's partly why we're doing the grant program to get the tokens in the hands of exactly such people.
Fantastic. Question here: what do you think about social tokens and personal tokens?
I'm not sure what these are, but I can answer a slightly different question or a related question. I happen to love the use of blockchains for identity management. We have seen essentially nothing of substance in that space. And we heard about Civic, and Civic had a very good idea initially, but fizzled out. And what I would love to see is a way to keep tabs on who's who. Essentially the equivalent of driver's licenses or the equivalent of national ID cards issued on blockchains in such a manner as not to reveal to anybody who you are. So I would love to be able to issue credentials to people. So for example, to you, Anthony, I give you a credential that says, this is Anthony Beaumont, his age is this, nationality, this, that, and the other, and have others who trust me consume those credentials from you, and have you reveal to those people just as much of your identity as you deem necessary. So normally, how do we interact with people? I go to the counter, I say, I want to rent a car. I have to then flash my ID card, and they suddenly know everything about me. If I have a bad interaction, that guy can stalk me. He knows where I live. He knows my birthday. He knows everything there is to know about me. In reality, the only authentication that he needs to do is make sure that I'm over a particular age. So we have the crypto means of doing this. I can give you a credential that you can then turn into a zero knowledge proof. And you say, look, I'm not going to reveal anything to you other than the fact that I'm a resident of this location and the fact that I'm over the age of 25, and therefore I get to pay this particular lower fee for renting the car. That's that kind of technology is something we can build, and I'm really excited about these. Doing so, I mean, there are a whole bunch of technological challenges here, but they're solvable challenges. So there's like a billion ideas like this at every turn. I would love to work with anybody who's excited about this particular idea, for instance, and many others like this exist. There just aren't enough people doing really creative things on top of blockchains at the moment, if you ask me. And there's so much more to do. I'm not sure if this has anything to do with social tokens. I don't know what they are, or personal tokens, but I thought they had something to do with identity. This is what I've been thinking about in terms of identity.
We can get into it in a bit. I want to go to our kind of first live question of the day. So it's from Munez. Munez is president of the Leeds Blockchain Society. in the great United Kingdom. So Munez, over to you. Go to ask your question.
Hi, Professor. First of all, thank you so much for a very insightful and inspiring AMA so far. And thank you, Anthony, for this opportunity. So I'm here on behalf of Leeds Crypto Blockchain Society, and a few of our members had very similar sort of questions. So I'm just going to go over 2 questions on behalf of our members. So the first question would be if you could tell us a bit about your journey from the field of academia and research and transitioning into a entrepreneurial world. And if you could give any advice to people who might be in similar positions, that would be my first question.
Sure, yes. Let's see. So it wasn't something that I explicitly set out to do. That is, I didn't want to be like, oh, you know, at some point I'm going to go commercialize this, that, and the other. It was all driven by passion for me. So I was mostly working on distributed systems in a data center. I was mostly working on databases. This was 10 years ago. And then the blockchain thing started happening. I read the Bitcoin paper, and then I was like, hey, you know, this looks interesting. So everybody has an internal process that's slightly different. I'll actually reveal some of mine. I looked at the paper. I checked to see if Satoshi cited my work on karma. He didn't. I got a little bit upset. I was like, you know, this guy doesn't know. He obviously is not a good scholar. He hasn't done his research, which he hasn't. He's not a scholar. He has a different take on things. And then I thought, okay, well, he's got a brilliant thing going. That's cool. Let's see if it's as good as he claims it is. And then I found the biggest known flaw with proof of work currencies known as selfish mining and so on that happened afterwards. So that got me going. It pulled me in. And then the space is so entertaining, so incredibly fun. On any given day, like crazy things happen. And I love crazy things. There are people who want good things in life. I'm one of the people who wants interesting things in life. You know, so the crazy stuff, like I would go to conferences and there'd be people from the Bank of England sitting side by side. And I don't know if they realize this, but the person to their right is a big money launderer from a darknet market. And they're just kind of sitting there chatting about blockchains. Or, you know, you see these situations like, you know, somebody is running an exchange, they disappear under mysterious circumstances, just like in the movie series Silicon Valley. Is there a body? What happened? And, you know, the more you look, suddenly you find Tucker Carlson is involved and there's bribery potentially. It's just craziness going on in different stages of this whole process. So anyhow, it's a very entertaining space. And so that I was just kind of treating it as a hobby. But then I realized, hey, this is more than a hobby. There's quite a bit going on here. And so I play a role as an academic. What happens is you have a unique perspective. There's the public at large, and they have their own discourse. And I don't step in because, you know, people are saying what needs to be said. They say the obvious stuff, right? So in the same sense that when you get sick, everybody says, oh, get well soon, right? That's being said. The obvious things are being said. As an academic, I saw my role as, well, I have to step in, not to say the obvious, not to get approval from the crowds, but to correct when they're going wrong. And so I did that, which gave me a bit of a negative reputation. But I think if you're doing this right, you cannot be liked. A good academic should not be liked by the vast majority of the population, because then all you're doing is amplifying what's already there. You're not changing anything. You got to be correcting things. When you're sick, the academic has to be the one that says, you're doing this wrong, and that's why you're getting sick over there. So I was the corrector in some sense. And that got me involved in a whole bunch of research questions. And in the end, I thought, look, it's just too hard to convince people to do the right thing. Let me just step in and start doing the right thing myself. It's easier on me and the world if I just do it and show it to them, as opposed to tell them what to do, because that's a very slow process. That's how I found myself doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. The second one, it's actually not related to blockchain. The members just wanted to know what your top 3 favorite books are of any genre.
Of any genre. All right. Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut. Obviously the best book of all time. Haroon and the Sea of Stories best book by Salman Rushdie, best book in English, best use of English language. The third one has to be, let's pick something nonfiction. Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. I think that's a great book. And that I already mentioned Richard Feynman earlier. He's fantastic. He was a fantastic fellow and a great role model for many academics. I hope that gives you a splattering of ideas.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No worries.
Thanks, Munez. Right, let's go to Dan Black. I think you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, all good.
All right, sir.
So my question's more a bit about like the overall market picture in general and looking at cycles. I think at the moment, obviously, a lot of institutional money is flowing into the space, and we didn't see this kind of back in 2017. I'm just wondering if you think the space will be propped up after, say, this bull market, or if we'll see like a collapse in price or market caps of all of the various altcoins out there, because obviously we saw that a lot of projects failed or basically went to zero. So I'm just wondering if you think startups in bear markets will be kind of hindered by the lack of new money entering the space.
I think, yeah, good question, Dan. I don't have a crystal ball on what's going to happen, but I can see repeated patterns in history. So prior to the current bull market, we at Avalabs called exactly what was going to happen, that the $1 trillion stimulus packages would go into, obviously, the equities market first, that the stocks would get a huge boost, and then that hot money would start looking for other venues, and it would come to crypto. That's exactly what's happened so far. That's trailing off, but there's going to be another wave of stimuli in different countries. So that's going to play out in exactly the same way. And why shouldn't it do exactly what it did before? It's kind of a repeatable pattern. At the same time, then, there's also a secondary thing going on where recent announcements by PayPal and others are giving legitimacy to the area. And I'm now beginning to see hedge funds, just old, stolid, very well-established hedge funds, slicing off a chunk of their holdings and putting it into crypto. And this is not informed money. You know how, like, when you and I trade stocks, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the inside scoop on a lot of companies. Now the roles are reversed. So all these stolid old gentlemen, and they're mostly men, on Wall Street, putting the money into crypto projects, they have no idea what they're doing. They're going to just go down. Probably they're going to go down by market cap. They're going to, just put money into projects and fluff up valuations. This is what I can see in my crystal ball for the next, I would say, 4 to 6 months or so. So your question is about the subsequent crash. Will there be one? There always is one. Economies always go up and down and up and down, and so that will always happen. There will be a pullback. There's like exuberance, pullback. That's common. It's human nature. What to do about it? Well, I think we are ahead of the uninformed flow of money. That's really funny that this lovely crowd of mostly young people, you guys are much better equipped than these hedge fund managers who command $1 billion or many $1 billion of accounts under management. So I think you are the informed money, and they're going to be the trailers. And what should a company do to live out a bear market? Just build. Just put the blinders on and build. These bear markets don't matter. It's going to do that undulation, but the trend is to the right and up. It has always been.
Great question, Dan. Thank you very much. Awesome. Right, we're going to go to Brandon now. I remember we were talking earlier about the person who had the trifecta of AI, quantum, and blockchain, and now he's here. Brandon's the president, most importantly, of the Oxford Blockchain Society, and a thoroughly clever chap. But over to you, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Thanks for some really insightful notions so far. But I guess I've been listening quite carefully, and what I wanted to know is essentially, on paper, it started with karma for you, and now it's essentially decentralizing Wall Street. And what I wanted to know is what is the drive for you to do that? What led you to that essentially? Was it just this entrepreneurial mindset, or is there, you know, a personal background to that?
That's a good question. This is like when you have to sit at the therapist and feel like, you know, yeah, why did I do that? I don't know, Brandon. You know, some things just come naturally, right? You just feel like this is the obvious thing. I don't understand why everybody around me doesn't see it, but this is clearly the obvious next thing to do. And if they are not going to do it, I'm going to do it, right? You know, you're at the beach, the water is there, everyone's looking around, somebody has to jump. And so I was like, this is just going to happen. So I think it's mostly that. It's yeah, the value. I don't want to repeat the value we bring to the space. It's so obvious, right? So the reach for assets, the speed. It's just amazing. And so why did I feel compelled to do it? I'm not sure, because nobody else was doing it. I knew how to do it. And I was like, this is typically my process. It's like, hey guys, like, this is clearly the right thing to do. Let's just do it. So it's that simple. I wish I could analyze that a little bit more, but you know, that's just really what it is. We're fairly shallow.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Brandon. Let's go to Lea from the University of Aberdeen.
Hi, I just have a quick question. What do you think is the best way to get involved in crypto as a graduate? So do you think it's more to actually go and work at a company? Do you think it's research, or do you think it's to be like your own founder and start your own project?
Whichever you feel compelled to do, it must come from within. So you mentioned being a graduate student, right? As a graduate student, how to get, so you know how you went to grad school, right? I'm not sure if you realize, I didn't really realize this myself, but looking back, I felt compelled to go to grad school. It wasn't a choice for me. It was clear. Like, just, I want to learn more. This is where I want to go. It's like, it was that simple for me. And if I look back, most of my friends did not have that compulsion. They were perfectly happy doing other things that they did. So whatever you feel compelled to do is the right thing to do for you. The easiest thing to do for most people who don't have a strong conviction is just immerse yourselves on literature reading, on finding out what the pain points are in industry. And there are many. Getting involved in open source projects is a great way to do that. So almost all of these projects are open source. They all welcome new people. And so bring your toolkit with you, whatever that might be. And if you don't have a specialized toolkit yet, then what you bring is just brawn, right? You bring the hardworking work ethic, and that also is an incredibly valuable thing. It's also very, very hard to find. If you're in grad school, you probably have that in spades. So that's already a great start. So you can count on that being with you, even if you've got no specialist knowledge whatsoever, but I'm sure you all do as well. So bring that with you to an open source project, identify pain points. There are, as I mentioned, at Avalanche, we have the AvaX program. It's a grant program for people who want to pursue a particular project. There are Discord channels where you can talk with people about project ideas. So if you don't have a strong project idea, you're like, hey, I'm interested in, you know, econ and blockchains, or I'm interested in consensus protocols and distributed systems. What are some things that would be interesting? The developers, the people behind the scenes, like myself, would be delighted to share with you guys some open questions where we need your help. And so those are great starting points. Internships are the last thing I should mention. We welcome interns during COVID times. You don't have to actually relocate or anything, and come work with us remotely. There's lots and lots of fun things to slice off and hand over to people who are remote, who are willing to examine something new. And you can see some things that are not public yet. So it would be fun.
Awesome. Great question, Lea. I'm conscious of time. Do we have time for one more question from Wario? Is that okay, Emin?
Of course, yeah, of course.
So Wario, go for it. Well, I know you're called Mario, but Mario, go for it. Oh, can we hear you? Oh, can anyone hear him? I can't hear him.
Now you muted yourself. Before you was good.
I can't.
Ah, there we go. That's better. Well, this happens in live production, really. No, it's not
Not working
happening.
it, Mario.
What do you want to type your question, or I'll ask it? It's all good. It happens. Type your question, and I'm going to ask it. Drum roll.
No, it's not embarrassing. It's all good, Mario. It's totally fine. Yeah, technical difficulties happen to the best of us. What's an excellent question up here?
Okay.
I'm not sure. There are so many great questions in this chat, Anthony.
There's quite a lot. I'm going to ask Samuel's one while we're waiting. I heard on a recent altcoin daily AMA with some Bitcoin maximalist auditor guy that Ethereum can't be audited. Can anyone explain what he's talking about?
I don't know. I don't know. Bitcoin maxis say all sorts of things about all sorts of other projects. They call everything a scam and so forth. It's really sad to see. It's not going to be the case that this is a one coin wins all kind of a scenario. We're all going to rise together, especially for the next, I don't know, 5 years for sure. So, in the very long term, of course, there's going to be a single winner, but we're not anywhere near there yet. And there's no room for maximalism. This is a scientifically driven field. There's technological progress at the core of it. So maximalism is just an approach where you just kind of close your mind to competing scientific facts. And that can get you money in the short term. That can build you a crazy community in the short term, but it can't help you win in the long term. So we avoid that in Avalanche. We're very science driven. We pride ourselves on that. We're very positive. We're a happy group of people. You can just look at the chats and so forth. Nobody's chatting about the price of a box. They're just, they're talking about what is possible. And what is possible technologically, what to build and so on. So I like that quite a bit. Ethereum, there's some issue about counting Ethereum, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what it is. But I just don't know what they're talking about. I haven't looked into it. Those are, neither Bitcoin nor Ethereum. Those are separate systems. I just don't know them.
Awesome. We've got Wario's question now.
Wario.
So, he says, the history of technology is filled with examples of what many consider not the best technological solution winning, e.g. beta versus VHS. Bill Gates signed that deal with IBM. When you look at this industry, do you think something similar is going to happen? Perhaps it ends up being Ethereum when it definitely isn't the best technologically speaking. Do you see it playing out?
Good question. This gets brought up a lot. So it gets brought up a hell of a lot, and you kind of have to first sit back and say, is that a really good example? Like, is beta versus VHS? Was beta better than VHS? Yes. Did VHS win? Yes. But how much was beta better than VHS again? Like, not that much. When the improvements are small, sure, then it just becomes a popularity contest because interoperability is so important. What we have today in blockchains is, interoperability is a non-issue. Nobody supports it. Nobody has a good interoperability story. The network effects in crypto are far, far weaker than what people would have you believe. Network effects are strong if you and I and everybody on this chat were to interact with each other on a person by person basis. If I were sending coins to, like, on my list, Yasen, Rock, Asken, Steve, Irem, Andreas, Robo, etc. We don't do that. What we do in crypto is we go to hubs, we go to exchanges. So if the exchange supports your coin, you're already as good as every other coin supported by the same set of exchanges. So the network effects are incredibly weak. So what happened for VHS, which is people were trading tapes among each other, does not happen in crypto. So, so the precondition there is not met for that analogy to apply. And if you've got something that is much better, that is everybody's digging the ground with a shovel, and you've got a steam shovel, you're in a different business, and all those guys will scatter, and they will have to just defer to the people with the steam shovels. And that's, I think, what we're going to see, that the better tech will come out ahead, as long as it's better by multiple orders of magnitude on quantitative metrics, or as long as it provides some qualitative thing that cannot be easily replicated, something like on the legal side, for example. So, so that's why I feel very good about Avalanche's future. Both quantitatively and qualitatively is so different, and clearly so far ahead of the rest of the pack, that I think the future is bright, and we're going to see things shake out, but not for another 5 years or so. Bitcoin is here to stay, and it's going to be used for what it's used for, but there's so much more out there, and it's going to be so exciting.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a nice place to finish. We've gone on for over an hour. I mean, I want to say a huge thank you, because A, for your time, most importantly, because that's an extremely valuable commodity. Well, not even commodity, it's yeah, a very valuable thing. Most importantly, your insightful answers and the depth of answers to all the students, and I think perfectly balancing explaining things simply whilst also talk about quite complex issues. And you can see just from the thank yous on chat how much people appreciate it. And I know that the students who couldn't attend, maybe because they weren't in the right time zone, will really enjoy listening to this and watching this on YouTube. So thank you very much from the whole of the Encode kind of student community. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Anthony. It's my pleasure always to talk to young, energetic folks. That's what I've always drawn my enthusiasm and sort of positive outlook from. So what a lovely opportunity to talk to a great crowd. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, everyone, look, keep hacking. We actually have an Avalanche technical workshop next Tuesday with Gabriel, so make sure you turn up to that, and we'll have the transcript for this up later tonight. For everyone, thank you very much. Have a good evening, afternoon, and rest of the morning, wherever you are. Thank you.